Good morning and welcome to this formal meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Rob Kendrick and I'm Chairman of the committee. Welcome to all members and officers present, and I'd also like to warmly welcome Mr. Paul Brewster, who is the new church representative and replaces Mr. Martin Kyle, who has stood down. Mr. Brewster is Director of the Lincoln Diocesan Board of Education and is also a co-opted governor and chair of Colby Church of England Primary School's governing body. And I hope you enjoy your time with us and find it an interesting meeting to attend. The video feed of this meeting is being broadcast as usual via the County Council's website, and I'd also like to welcome members of the press and public who are watching our meeting online. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I'd like to remind you that all your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. Welcome also to the following senior officers from Children's Services: Heather Sandy, Executive Director, Children's Services; Linda Dennett, Assistant Director, Children's Health and Commissioning; Joe Kavanagh, Assistant Director, Early Help; and Martin Smith, Assistant Director, Children's Education. And I'd also like to welcome Councillor Mrs. Patricia Bradwell, OBE, Executive Councillor for Children's Services, Community Safety, Procurement and Migration, who will be joining us in a minute. She is in the building. And her Executive Support Councillor, Councillor Stephen Rowe, who is also attending today's meeting. As usual, I'd like to begin with the usual health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through reception into the front car park and await further instructions. Can I please remind everyone to ensure their mobiles and other electronic devices are on silent mode? And when invited to speak, can you please ensure you switch your microphone on? Otherwise, those attending the meeting via Teams and online, press and public that is, listening in, won't be able to hear you. And please be aware you need to speak directly into the microphones to be heard. If you wish to speak during the meeting, can you please raise your hand and my Vice Chairman, Councillor Robert Reid, will make a note. So without delay, we'll move on to the business of today's agenda. Firstly, apologies for absence and replacement members. Jess, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Dr. Emile van der Zee, the Parent Governor Representative, and Tara Jones, the Assistant Director of Children's Safeguarding. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and no further apologies. No. Item 2 is declaration of members' interests. Members of the committee are reminded they only need to declare any relevant interests that have not been declared on their declaration of pecuniary interest forms. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No. Fine, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 3, which is minutes of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 6th of September 2024. And this is to approve and sign the minutes from the meeting of the committee held on that date as set out on pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack as a correct record. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Sear, and a seconder? Councillor Briggs. We will now vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. I see none against and obviously no abstentions. Thank you very much. Those minutes are now agreed. We now move on to item 4, which is announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Chief Officers. Following the resignation of Mr. Martin Kyle, these are my announcements, I should say. Following the resignation of Mr. Martin Kyle from the Lincoln Diocesan Board of Education and in turn the church representative, the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, Councillor Adam Stokes, and I have written a joint letter to Mr. Kyle to thank him for his contribution to both committees. That's the end of my announcement. I'd just like to mention that we'll have our customary 10-minute comfort break before item 8. So the break is before item 8 this morning. Any executive councillor announcements in Mrs. Bradwell's temporary absence from the chamber? Councillor Rowe, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief officer announcements?
No, thank you, Chair.
None from you. Thank you. We can now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Stay Safe Partnership. And this item can be found on pages 17 to 28 of your agenda pack, and it provides a summary of the work of the Stay Safety Safe Partnership, which delivers preventative education to children and young people in schools. And just to remind us of the actions required of this committee, we are required to review the content of the report and offer any comment on the delivery of the Stay Safe Partnership and further links that could be made to enhance delivery and successful outcomes. And without further delay, I'd like to welcome Catherine Smith, Community Safety Strategy Coordinator with lead for preventative education, who will be presenting the report, and also welcome to Martin Parker, Assistant Director for Public Protection, who's attending to help answer any questions. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. Today I've brought you this paper highlighting the work of the Stay Safe Partnership. This paper is for informational purposes, with the work of the partnership being previously scrutinised at our Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee in September. I would like to take the paper as being read and provide you with some of the key information. The Stay Safe Partnership was commissioned in 2014 by Safer Lincolnshire Partnership and the Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership, who continue to provide governance over our work. Our purpose is to provide a consistent, universal prevention education that is delivered by experts in their field to provisions across Lincolnshire. We deliver class-based workshops to groups of children and young people. For those children and young people requiring more in-depth intervention or one-to-one support, we would refer directly to our partners within children's services, such as Futures for Me or Early Help to Support. We manage a directory of preventative education from our 7 core partners and other trusted organisations such as HSBC, NSPCC and Positive Health. The directory includes downloadable resources, student workshops, staff training and parent information that is accessible and all in one place. We have a wide reach across Lincolnshire, with take-up of resources continuing to increase year on year, which can be seen on table on page 19. 106,564 students and staff accessed one of the workshops available on the directory last academic year. Our 7 core partners are detailed on page 18, one correction being the recent change in the name of Soldas to Haven. Our 7 core partners joined to collaboratively offer Stay Safe Days in secondary provisions. Details of the workshops offered during the Stay Safe Day can be seen on page 19. Last academic year, we visited 100% of mainstream secondary schools and delivered to 22,574 students. These workshops are also offered to our pupil referral units, independent schools, alternative education provisions and SEND provisions. We tailor to the needs of these provisions, including offering the sessions across the course of the year rather than on one day, which is detailed on page 20. Each provision is offered 2 free Stay Safe days a year, one at Key Stage 3 and one at Key Stage 4. It should also be noted that this is our universal offer, and where it is required, subjects on the days can be delivered separately following any incidents or issues that a school may have in order to meet their need. Due to the nature of the workshops, we often receive disclosures from students on the day, and teachers have reported a rise in disclosures in the week following our delivery. This is detailed on page 20. In 23-24, the academic year, there were 30 disclosures on the day, and we are aware of 21 more that took place after we had left. All disclosures are reported to the safeguarding leads within the education provision that we are attending for them to be able to take that forward. This ensures that there is consistency and the continued support for that student is in place. Alongside our secondary offer, all core partners also have workshops for our primary provisions that can be accessed free of charge, which are detailed on page 21 and 22. And include a full curriculum of online safety and healthy relationship workshops from year 2 to year 6. Additional highlights include the work of our partners in Lincolnshire Police and the work around the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, with them delivering on topics such as sexual harassment, effects and realities of pornography, and sexual violence. They have also recently opened The Happening, which is an immersive knife crime intervention centre which is located in Sleaford. This opened in January and is accessed by education providers, Futures for Me and Positive Futures. The Happening's main aim is to prevent and divert young people from carrying a knife and engaging in serious violence. Qualitative and quantitative data is collated and used to monitor the impact of Stay Safe interventions on pupils' thinking and decision making. The partnership collates feedback online with secondary students using either QR codes or tablets following the Stay Safe days. 10,487 students offered their responses in the last academic year. This information is all reported on page 24. In addition to gathering data on our own sessions and the impacts, which we then use to adapt and change in order to make them as impactful as possible with the students. We also collect information around other topics that they would have liked further education on, which has helped us to identify any raising trends. We're then able to use this information and share it with our partners. For example, sexual health has been a rising trend over the last 2 years, and we've been able to share this with LPFT during their sexual health they're reviewing their commission service. So they were able then to look at how the C-card scheme is offered to children and young people. And then we've worked with them on how we can make that better within the county and more accessible. Additionally, we ask around the fear of crime, which we share quarterly with neighbourhood policing teams and district councils to use the voice of our young people in their plans also. And more information on this element can be found on page 24 and 25. It should be noted that most children and young people feel safe within Lincolnshire. As you can see from the report, we have a wide range of universal prevention offers that education provisions can access. We've built up a good relationship with our schools and workshops are widely accessed. We continue to be able to gather a large quantity of children and young people voice that we share with our colleagues across services and where relevant to impact on operational and strategic plans. We are committed to continuing to grow our links with children's services so that we can continue to work collaboratively and in an organic manner to improve impacts and outcomes for all. And I'd welcome any questions and comments from members.
Thank you very much for that overview. Do we have any questions? If not, I shall kick off because I've got one or two, and I think Councillor Reid has one, and Councillor Rowe. On page 19, it mentions that in 2023-24, 80% of all Lincolnshire government registered schools accessed a workshop from the Stay Safe directory. Could you explain what actions the partnership is undertaking to reach the outstanding 20%?
So we continue to attend safeguarding briefings. We use the school newsletter. We have our own newsletter in order to regularly kind of advertise and publicise the services that the Stay Safe partnership has. I think one of the elements that we would have issue in reaching the further 20% is our capacity, because we are basically at capacity in terms of the staffing that we have. So it would require additional investment within the service to be able to kind of top it up.
Thanks very much. Councillor Reid, you had a question?
Thank you very much indeed. Knife crime and the difficulties of restraint is something that's on all of our minds, particularly in my division, because I've had an incident in the last few months as well. Whereby which I welcome the education and the facility that's available in Sleaford, and I'm sure many councillors have referred to their parishes of this facility that is available by way of education and also by way of support when these horrible atrocities actually happen. Could you perhaps expand for me or give me your thoughts on perhaps further education, say for like a refresher for say year 11? So, because I know that the primary time of education with our children is in year 9, but I wondered whether a refresher or to try and be even more prevalent with these nasty sorts of behaviour and the detriment might be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the police education plan, because knife crime would fall under our colleagues within Lincolnshire Police, there is a range of topics that obviously are also prevalent within our county that we have to be able to cover, so that's why it's kind of broken down in that universal offer. However, if we have identified that there is an area where knife crime has become prevalent, we can then offer that to the schools within that area. So it's not saying that we kind of rest on the fact that that's the universal offer and that's it, we're not offering any more. If there's an issue identified, or say our colleagues in the neighbourhood policing teams come to us and say we're having issues with knife crime, can you go and educate? We would offer that to all the schools within that area. Also, if a school comes to us directly and says we've had an issue, again, our police colleagues would go and deliver that workshop within there, and that ranges from primary school up. They would make it age appropriate depending on where they're going. Our colleges can also access that, and we often ask them which element they would like in college. So they tend to want to have the county lines input rather than the knife crime input, but some will choose to have that if that has become a relevant issue within their kind of area again. Equally, the police are also looking at other elements that need to be focused on, such as like emotions into violence, because we know that kind of peer-on-peer violence is on the rise as well. So they're constantly evaluating the programme, but just because they're not receiving it as a universal manner across the year groups, if there is an issue, we will go, and if it's brought to our attention, we'll go and target those areas directly.
Did you wish to come back, Councillor Reid?
Yeah, because I didn't quite sort of pick up the answer I was sort of looking for. The refresher for year 11, would that be considered to be something that could be introduced, please?
So in year 11 at the moment, what they're looking at is emotions into violence. So what they're looking at is actually behind that element. So why do they get involved in kind of violent incidences? They're looking at that consequences and those elements. So it will tie into it, but they are focusing more on that peer-on-peer violence at the moment due to kind of the evidence that we have coming in and what's happening across the county currently. But like I've said, if a college or a school in year 11 would like knife crime, we can go in and repeat that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Rowe, you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say, I actually attended one of the Stay Safe days at one of the local schools, which was extremely well received. It was quite an interesting and entertaining period. It was good that I was able to drop it on one of the classes and embarrass my granddaughter, but it's always fun when you can do that. The feedback from her was very positive. I also spoke with some of the staff and they made similar comments that they felt it was a well worthwhile project. I also have attended the happening in Sleaford for the knife presentation and once again, very worthwhile, very well put over, very interesting. And if members ever get the opportunity to do either of those things, I would highly recommend them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reyes. I'd endorse your remarks, particularly about the happening in Sleaford. I attended it just before it opened, and I know a number of colleagues here have attended or visited it, and it's well worthwhile. If you've not been able to visit it, next time that becomes available, I would urge people to go to it. It's a very interesting operation there. I think the next questioner is Councillor Gray, followed by Councillor Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your report. I just wanted to comment on the parental engagement, which of course we know is vital. I think I noted there's biannual parent teams events, so therefore online. I just wondered, is there any in-person options? Because being from East Lindsey, I know there's considerable digital poverty, especially along our coastal strip. So is there actually an option where people can actually attend something online and face-to-face?
So previously, prior to COVID, they used to offer face-to-face engagement for parents, but it was really lowly attended. And obviously, in terms of our capacity, we're quite a small team, so we have to be quite smart in the way that we work. So we did move to that kind of online and being able to record those meetings so that parents who want to attend but say something happens at home with their children and they can't then attend on the night, they can go back and re-watch it and watch the bits that they want to watch. So unfortunately at the moment we are sticking to the online element because it seems to be very well attended. Because of previous experience, obviously, that it's not well attended if we go in person. I think the thing to say, though, as well, is in terms of that parental engagement, after all of our sessions now, what we have started to do is create parent fact sheets based on what we're talking to the children about within those workshops so that we can send them out to the school to circulate with parents so that parents are then getting that education around this is what your children have been spoken to about, and these are further support links should you wish to have them, and these are signs to look out for. So we're constantly trying to increase that parent engagement, even for those ones who wouldn't necessarily be able to get that online.
Councillor Whittington.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the report. Looking on the sort of workshops you've been holding on page 19, they obviously are all concerned with sort of things external that could impact a child. You know, online safety, antisocial behaviour, hate crime. That sort of stuff, which is great. But I'm just wondering, because we do know sadly that an awful lot of there can be threats to children within their family, and I'm just wondering if this is an area, because I'm guessing it's difficult interfering with the sort of the internal relationships within a family, but I'm just wondering because sadly we do know from when children are taken into care that quite often they've been subject to abuse or neglect within the families. Are any sort of things that we can do to sort of almost, and again, this is using a highly term like normal family, because what is a normal family, but what we can do to educate children as to kind of what a normal, and again, it's in inverted commas, normal family looks like, because sometimes, because I know from having adopted a child that speaking to him now he's older, a lot of what happened to him when he was younger, he just thought that was normal. You know what I mean? And so I'm just wondering how we can almost not educate children, but make them aware of what is acceptable and what isn't. My second question is then is how does the team then work in with children's safeguarding as well? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of your first question, we have a variety of workshops that kind of support that in a universal way. Obviously, in terms of that more needed one-to-one intervention with those children who are identified as actually having to go through those issues, then we would refer into our children's services colleagues, because that goes beyond our remit. But you're very right in saying that actually if they have experienced it, that becomes their normal, what they feel is normal in terms of values and beliefs. So our domestic abuse partnership, they have 2 officers who support our school delivery. This academic year, they have created a new curriculum for their primary school children, because we know that actually if we can impact it primary, it's going to have more benefit, because that's when they're a little bit more moldable before they become teenagers. Within the primary, we are looking specifically at those skills needed to have a healthy relationship, and it's a lot of scenario-based work as well to try and get those young people to think about different consequences, think about that empathy for other people, and to hear from their peers about what they feel is normal as well, because that often helps with that challenge. So we're looking at topics like how do we deal with our emotions, what are positive boundaries, what are respectful communication, how do we resolve conflicts, and looking at our identity as well before then they go to secondary school, and then they would learn about domestic abuse, coercive control, and family relationships would be part of that education as well. So we are covering that element within that. Our colleagues at NSPCC, they do a great job as well in terms of that child abuse element, and they have several workshops that are at primary school too. So there is work going on in that area. In terms of our safeguarding, so where we are to get a disclosure.
Catherine, can I just
sorry.
Can I just come in on that one as well? So just to say, and I guess it's fantastic to hear all about this work, and we're going to talk about the safeguarding element. But I think it's important to remember as well, schools do a really good job at this. So the PSHE curriculum is written around helping teachers to engage with children, to talk about what's normal, what's acceptable, what's happening in your house, because actually normal looks different in lots of different houses, as I know you know. But I think the workshops are fantastic. They're really stimulating. They're really engaging for children and young people. and the teachers then pick up that journey. And I think it's just important to recognise these are absolutely fantastic sessions, but we also have 6,000 teachers and 6,000 teaching assistants in Lincolnshire who work with these children every day and who have curriculums that build on this as well. And most of our referrals come through that route, you know, that picking up concerns as well. So it's just to reassure you, I think, in terms of these are great programmes, but we're not reliant on them to catch everything, because we've got all those other workforce as well. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, definitely, or definitely as in an accompaniment to what teachers are doing, because our teachers do a fantastic job, and obviously they then do all the further elements of stuff after we've been in as well. In terms of safeguarding, we wouldn't deal with that ourselves, because actually we've never met these children before. We're coming in as fresh person. We don't have a relationship with that child. If the topics that we are delivering has sparked something in them where they need to disclose, then we obviously allow them that space, and then we would pass that on to the safeguarding leads within the school, who would then follow their procedures in order to follow it through, because they are best placed to be able to support that child.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much, Heather, for that intervention. Jo, did you wish to add anything?
No, I think Catherine's done a fantastic job of covering everything. All I was going to say was that we work really closely, and in relation to Councillor Reid's comment around knife crime, you work really closely with Future for Me and Positive Future. So if there is a concern about a particular group of young people, they would pick it up.
Thanks very much. I believe the next questioner is Councillor Armiger.
Yeah, in your report you mentioned that you explored the idea of charging for workshops, but that resulted in a significant decrease in bookings. Are you thinking of any alternative funding models to consider besides charging the schools?
So we don't currently charge the schools for the workshops that we deliver, unless they choose to pick up additional workshops, which some of them actually do want them for several, and then they will obviously pay for that element of things. We do actively look for other elements of funding in order to fund the team. So we're currently funded through our core budget in community safety. Our domestic abuse team have funding from the DA grant, and then the police have additional funding from the Home Office. But we're constantly looking at how can we ensure that the team continues to be sustainable. And I know Martin will probably know more about funding than I will, so I'm going to pass it on to him.
Yeah, we're currently looking at some of our packages, especially where we're supporting industry and private businesses outside of the educational piece. So our school education, we're going to try and keep that as free as possible in terms of a core offer. But we do a lot of kind of private business input in terms of safety, certainly around domestic abuse, certainly around financial harms, where we're looking actually at what that financial profile might look like. So we're looking to leverage where we're doing business outside of kind of, or education inputs outside of schools. Where else are we delivering those packages, and actually what does that look like as a kind of an income stream? So we are looking at that at the moment.
Thanks very much. Do we have any further questioners indicating? There's just one thing I spotted on the chart of the workshops, the road safety one. I notice it doesn't start till year 9. Is there a particular reason it starts at year 9? I mean, children are crossing the road at all ages. I was just wondering why it doesn't start till 9.
So we've actually moved that this year down to year 7 and 8, and fire safety have moved up to year 9, 10 and 11. Originally it was put in at year 9 because whenever they decided on the topics and the agencies who would go in at our inception, it was done around the evidence. So it's that age group was the age group that was more likely involved in fatal road incidents, so it was delivered at that age range. But the road safety team have a full package from primary school the whole way up, so they are delivering consistently across the board. And we've moved it down this year because Max Respect, sadly, it's no longer there. So they've taken up that gap in the market, and they're delivering at that age now.
Thanks very much. That's very helpful. If we have no further questions, then I'd like to move to a proposal. And I propose that the committee endorses the delivery model of the Stay Safe Partnership, and our suggestions on potential links to enhanced delivery and successful outcomes be recorded, and that we receive a further update in 12 months from now. Can you please raise your hand if you agree with that proposal? I think that's unanimous, and thank you very much, Catherine and Martin, for fielding the questions this morning. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item 6, Building Communities of Specialist Provision Strategy Progress Report. And this item can be found on pages 29 to 44 of your agenda packs. And it provides an update on Year 6 of the implementation of the Building Communities of Specialist Provision, together in Lincolnshire strategy, and summarises progress made between October 2023 and this October 2024. And just to recap on the actions required of us, we're required to firstly review and comment on the content of the report on the progress made in that period, and secondly, to receive an update on Year 7 of the implementation in October 2025. And I'd like to welcome Eileen McMorrow, Programme Manager for SEND and Inclusion, to present the report. It's over to you, Eileen, now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick. Thank you very much for your time, everyone, today. Just to provide you with a progress report for the last 12 months on the Building Communities of Specialist Provision strategy, which is Lincolnshire's specialist education strategy, particularly focusing around the provision within our specialist settings and also the capital development programme. I'll take you through the main highlights of the report, focusing initially on the capital programme and the progress made within that aspect. So significant advancements have been made within the last 12 months. So we're now at a place where 11 special school schemes have been completed and 2 final schemes are currently in construction, set for completion September 2025. These schools provide specialist education for children with a wide range of complex needs, with a view to ensuring that children do not have to travel significant journeys and can access education in their local communities. The key milestones for the capital programme met in the reporting period are the completion and opening of Horncastle St Lawrence School, with the official opening planned for the 29th of October, completion and opening of the Lincoln St Christopher's Secondary School, with the official opening planned for the 22nd of November, and construction commenced both on St Francis School in Lincoln and construction commenced at Gosberton House Academy in Gosberton. I'd also like to take this opportunity to inform the committee of some national recognition and local recognition for the programme. St Christopher's Primary School has recently been shortlisted for 2 categories at the National Education Estates Awards for in both pupil experience and inclusive design. Unfortunately not successful, but to be shortlisted in such a high calibre field on the national stage is very, very proud of that, to say the least. However, the scheme did win Development Project of the Year for over £5 million at the Greater Lincolnshire Construction and Property Awards in 2024 in February. So just wanted to inform committee of that in terms of recognition through the last 12 months. With reference to the completed projects, St Lawrence and St Christopher's Secondaries are now open, with new enhanced facilities including specialised classrooms, therapy spaces and outdoor learning environments. These improvements have been positively impacting students' learning experience and behaviour, with positive feedback from both head teachers cited in the report. The budget remains under regular review through the governance structures, and council officers are confident that the allocated budget remains sufficient to complete the programme. As the programme nears completion with only 2 schemes remaining, any financial risks have significantly decreased. So moving on to the supporting systems to meet the wider range of complex needs in our specialist settings. The SEND learning platform is now well established, and it's supporting special and mainstream schools along with parents and carers and other professionals by providing valuable training and resources on special educational needs. Over 8,000 modules have been completed, which is already showing a positive impact on education, health and care plan, needs assessment requests and student retention in appropriate educational settings. Research has recently been undertaken on the impact of the workforce development platform with some interesting outcomes. As highlighted in the paper, there is an emerging correlation between the number of modules a school completes and their likelihood to submit an education, health and care needs assessment, which can be seen on page 37, table 2. There is also, to a slightly lesser extent, an emerging correlation between modules completed and the number of suspensions in schools for those on SEN support. It's not yet possible to confirm correlation between modules and modules completed and permanent exclusions, but this will be monitored on and reported in due course. In terms of our health offer and equipment services, schools continue to receive collaborative health services and specialist medical equipment, which has proven cost-effective and supportive of students' medical needs. Local area partnership remains responsible for developing a system whereby all special schools have the capabilities and confidence to meet the needs of children and young people with the most complex medical needs and those who are long-term ventilated. Working in partnership, the ICB, LCC and health provider trusts have developed a delivery model which addresses gaps in the existing system. This model and the associated business cases is going through ICB decision making as of November, and we're hoping for an outcome by January of next year. Community Equipment Services continues to provide valuable support to the SEND schools through Lincolnshire. Feedback from these schools have been overwhelmingly positive, and as you can see from the paper, 885 activities, including 646 services, with a cost savings for the schools of between 30 and 70% as a benefit of being on this contract. And we've now been able to move the Physical Disabilities Outreach Service, Commission Service, into this contract as well, with a view to making some efficiencies there. The specialist-led community panels, their purpose is intended to reduce transition from special school to INMS and to help avoid permanent exclusions from our specialist settings. Engagement with professionals at these panels is strong, with representation from health and social care services, along with education, local authority and Lincolnshire Parent Carer Forum. The panels are chaired by special school head teachers and are proving to be effective in ensuring children and young people are placed in the right educational setting for their needs. Of the 46 referrals considered since the panels were established just over 18 months ago, 54% of cases where a setting stated that they could no longer meet need or that the student was at risk of exclusion, the child was retained in the original setting after the discussions at the panel. And where students have transferred to INMS, this was the panel's recommendation in 70% of cases, inferring that that's based on need. And just to pick a specific referrer and a specific school, despite being the highest referrer, Greenfields Academy has shown evidence of effective use of these panels, and since June 2023, 100% of their referrals have been retained in setting following the advice and guidance from this forum. So in terms of the future outlook, despite the significant progress that's made, demand for specialist provision continues to grow, along with an increase in permanent exclusions. As the committee will be aware, Phase 2 has recently been approved, so there are plans for further capital investment to meet needs both current and future. But the overall conclusion is that the programme has had a transformative effect on specialist education in Lincolnshire, but ongoing demand highlights the need for continued development. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Eileen, for that comprehensive report, and it's very rewarding to hear the recognition that certain aspects of the service have received. I mean, shortlisting is an achievement in itself, I think. So I think that's great news. Councillor Reid, do we have any questions at this stage?
Can't see any at the moment, Chair.
Councillor
there we go. Councillor Mark Whittington. Mrs. Bedwell.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Eileen. Thanks for the report. Actually, this is it's great to see that the scheme is going so well and is on target, because if you just read the report, we might be able to provide over 500 extra places. But I think, as you said, the demand keeps increasing, which is why we got Phase 2. I mean, this increase in provision works for both families and also works for the council as well, because obviously if you can have children being educated as close to home as they possibly can, it's in their long-term interest. And the last thing we want is to have children having to travel halfway across the county, because we know as well there's a pressure on home to school transport as well. So hence the importance of ensuring the children can receive the education they need as locally as possible, and also within a mainstream setting. So many congratulations on it so far, and it's really good to see that the scheme has been successful so far. I've got no real questions, but because I know this is an area that we constantly look at on this committee, and we have asked some challenging questions in the past, and we've received the assurances, and it's great to actually see that sort of that question and reassurance. We're actually now at a situation where phase one is coming to an end. It's going to be within the financial envelope. It's on target. I just think it's a great success story. And I sometimes think that we do need to be a little bit more. We need to stand up and shout as a council when we do have success stories like this. So well done to everybody involved.
Thanks very much, Councillor Whittington. I agree we should shout as loud as possible about the success of the scheme. Councillor Mrs Bradwell, I believe you wish to comment.
Yeah, just to say, well, thank you to the officers who had this great idea of expanding our special schools, and it has been, it is a great project, and we are the MV. I know my colleagues in the East Midlands, nobody has done such a big project as what we have. But at the end of the day, as Mark's just mentioned, these young people are getting the specialist education that they need. And, that's what we as a council, I believe, as council members are here to try and do, make the very best of the services that we deliver in Lincolnshire. So, yeah, I'm really pleased and, really proud of what we have delivered, because the schools that we've extended or we've built several new ones, are state of the art. And these young people, I remember the Horncastle one, and William, I know, is a member there, but that school had such narrow corridors that the children really struggled to get their wheelchairs down because it was built God knows when. And we had a number like that. Now they've got really wide corridors. Then, you could have two children with wheelchairs together going down them. So, we have made that investment's going to make a tremendous difference to the young people in Lincolnshire.
Thank you very much. And I think actually the next questioner is Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And just following on from what Councillor Bradwell said, Councillor Bradwell and I had spoken about the old St Lawrence School in the past, and Eileen very kindly showed me around the school as it just really newly reopened. And it really is splendid. I mean, those who've not had the chance to see it, it's such a fabulous learning environment. And what they're providing is such a special education. I don't think it mentions in the report, but members may know, but they have a farm there. They have exotic animals there. And just to see the delight on some of those students' faces dealing with them, I was actually handed a snake. I don't do snakes, but what somebody wanted to give me a snake, etc. It really, really was very special to see. But what I did witness there was a really tricky situation going on. But the way in which the staff had dealt with it in such a caring, professional way was really outstanding for me and really blew me away, I have to say, and I won't ever forget it. So congratulations to the team, congratulations to Councillor Bradwell, because it really is a very special thing that's happening here in Lincolnshire with our special schools.
Thank you very much for those comments, Councillor Gray. Councillor Nutman, I believe you have a question or comment.
Yeah, it was more on the mainstream. We don't have the permanent exclusions, which we're all proud of. Do we follow up on, yes, we're not permanently excluded, but then we're probably are we keeping children in mainstream that really could do with going into special needs schools? Because, I mean, I do know of one case where a girl is, she goes into school maybe one day, she's there half the day, and then she's excluded for a day and a half, and then she goes back for a day, and then she's excluded for a day. So, I mean, her attendance is like 28%, but she's not getting permanently excluded. Do we follow up on those children?
Eileen, I think Heather wishes to come in at this point.
Yeah, thank you. So we do get permanent exclusions in Lincolnshire, unfortunately, and it's something that we work really hard with our schools to avoid wherever possible, but we have seen a rise in that since the pandemic. We do work with schools. We work really hard with schools around early intervention. Martin's team work tirelessly to support the sector. What we have currently is a really low excluding primary sector, and then a secondary sector which is largely low excluding but has a minority of schools that do higher levels of excluding that take us higher overall. So we're working in a really targeted way around that. With regard to the example you've given, a pupil whose attendance is as low as that wouldn't be for the suspensions, which is what I think you're talking about, because there is a maximum number of suspensions a school can give before it triggers a review toward permanent. So that you can come back, yeah.
I think what I really was meaning, do we miss these children when they actually probably could do with being at a special education school rather than the special education that they give in the mainstream? Are they missing what this child probably needs?
I think, Martin, did you wish to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a couple of approaches to responding to that question. So for the last year, we've been conducting, as part of the DFE guidance on attendance, is targeted termly support meetings with schools. So there are strategic conversations with every school in the county. We do about 1,400 visits across the teams to talk with individual settings and then go through all of their students who are being flagged up with poor attendance and checking that there's an appropriate support plan or pathway in place to do that. So it might not be around special school education, because special school education is for those children where an EHCP has determined that a specialist provision is required. Certainly in terms of in Lincolnshire and nationally, the access to specialist provision is of really high demand. There's a national shortage of places, hence the brilliant work of the teams to create sufficiency. But in Lincolnshire, there are a number of options available to young people and their families through the local offer, whether that's the EBSA pathway, emotionally based school avoidance pathway, whether that's through the targeted support meetings with schools for attendance, but also the brilliant work that lots of our schools do without the help of the local authority in terms of that early help and removing barriers to school attendance. So just wanted to kind of position that kind of, it's a complex area when you talk about attendance and what the appropriate pathway to supporting that improvement is.
Heather, you wish to come in as well, I think.
Yeah, the final point I really wanted to emphasise was that there was the outcomes for children and young people. So there's been a report published recently by ISOS, which we can share with the committee. It's a long read, but the summary is really interesting. And basically what that's saying is children's outcomes don't improve in specialist provision particularly. So the challenge for us is, if that young person has a chance of getting 5 GCSEs and going on to mainstream college and getting employment and living an independent adult life, those chances are markedly improved if they remain in mainstream. So working with mainstream to help them to support with the behaviour challenges and with the special educational needs is increasingly important. A, because it's better for children. B, because we want to keep the money where most children are in the mainstream wherever possible. So we want to bring back that spend in specialist and be able to invest it in mainstream. Hence, we had the paper at the last committee about investing in resource units within our mainstream schools. I think that's really important. And then the third reason is currently the SEND system, not in Lincolnshire, but in other areas, is breaking councils financially. And if we continue to export more and more children to specialist provision, the high needs block will not be able to sustain that. And so there is something about making sure we're working for those children who can thrive in mainstream school. We need to put the right ingredients into the mainstream system to support them so that they're not having to have half a day off because they're suspended, or they've got the right resources within the school, because you're right, that situation's not good for the child or for others in the class either. But we need to give those resources to schools, and we need to see that investment back into mainstream settings to start to ensure that the vast majority of our children can thrive in mainstream settings. And we increasingly hear stories about young people who were placed in specialist provision and want to move back to mainstream. They do feel they're not getting that breadth of curriculum or that challenge. And we know that there are children now who would have almost automatically be placed in mainstream because of their needs, who are thriving and tell us they want to stay in mainstream with their friends who live locally, and they're making good progress. So it is a really complex area, but I think it is about how do we support our mainstream schools to serve their communities, including those with additional needs.
Thanks very much. Tracy, our Senior Scrutiny Officer, wishes to make a comment.
Thank you. Just to highlight the ISOS partnership report that Heather just mentioned. Jess circulated it to the committee members on Wednesday afternoon, so you should already have a copy of it. That was in response to the Phase 2 report that you considered at the last meeting. You requested a copy of it, so it already has been circulated.
Thanks very much. Councillor Reid, do we have any more questioners?
Not that I'm aware of, but if I could indulge.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. On page 37, with reference to the Workforce Development Service, it alludes to the fact that there's 41 schools that haven't yet made any contact about needing the service. Is there any measures to promote these schools for support, please?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. So in terms of updated figures for accessing the workforce development, as of the 2nd of October, 8,864 modules had been completed, and the number of schools accessing had increased by 4, so we were up to 322, I believe. So we are starting to see that increase, but also there is a significant piece of work done around that needs to be further enhanced around publicity and marketing. So in terms of what's done at the moment, it's part of the provider's contract around marketing and publicity, and they provide marketing and presentations at all of the children's services briefings, so the Senko briefings, the graduated approach briefings, and it's regularly raised also at the head teacher briefings. As local authority officers, we've presented both at the Lincolnshire Parent Carer Forum Week of Send, and we've also done a specific workshop for Lincolnshire Parent Carer Forum on the workforce development to hopefully increase the number of parents and carers accessing as well. And we're recently undertaking starting a piece of work with early years as well to promote use of the platform on early years. So we're really focusing over the next sort of 6 to 8 months on targeting those who don't.
Perhaps I ought to say well done.
Thanks very much. If we have no further questions or comments indicated, I'd like to thank Eileen for her presentation this morning. And I think a number of members have commented on the success story that is this provision. And I think that all the staff in the teams are to be commended and congratulated on all the work they've done to achieve this level of success. So I'm very happy to propose that the committee is satisfied with the progress made between October 2023 and October 2024, and that we receive an update in October 2025 on Year 7 of the Phase 1 implementation and the progress made in Year 1 of Phase 2 implementation. If you agree with that proposal, could you please raise your hand? Thank you very much. That is agreed. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you very much.
We now move on to item 7, Children's Services Annual Statutory Complaints Report 2023-24. And this item can be found on pages 45 to 60 of your agenda pack. And it invites the committee to consider the Children's Services Annual Statutory Complaint Report from 23-24. And this is a statutory requirement and serves to update the committee on the performance of children's services in relation to complaints. And just to remind the committee that the report only addresses complaints relating to children's social care in line with the statutory requirement and does not contain any data relating to complaints about wider children's services. And just to recap on the actions required of us, we're required to review and seek assurance on the annual complaints report for 23-24. And without delay, I'd like to invite Carolyn Knight, Head of Service, Quality and Standards and Principal Social Worker, to present the report. Over to you, Caroline.
Good morning. So the report that's before you today, as Councillor Kendrick's already eloquently introduced, is the complaint report in relation to children's social care. So we do have a separate complaints process around corporate other children's services complaints, but this is just for those social care teams within children's services. The process for managing complaints and the different levels in the procedure are set out in the report, and I don't intend to go through those in any detail. So for the period April 23 to March 2024, a total of 222 contacts were received relating to complaints. Of these, 22 were managed informally and resolved, and therefore didn't enter the formal complaints process. 200 complaints did enter the formal process, which we recognise is quite a big increase on previous years. There has been a significant increase in relation to complaints across the whole of the County Council, and also nationally and regionally there have been significant increases, and the local government ombudsman reflected on this in his recently published annual report. So the report details the breakdown of the complaints across the frontline teams, and overall, in proportion to the teams, it's fairly consistent with previous years. Some of the complaints that have been made and some of the cases that have been worked within children and social care are increasingly complex, and by that I mean there's a number of variables in terms of challenges such as domestic abuse, mental health, drug, alcohol issues, blended families, and those challenges have meant that we've not been able to resolve some of them as at the informal level, or as many of them as we have done previously. So whilst the number of complaints has gone up, it still remains a very small percentage in relation to the number of children and families that are open to the social care teams. So there's been, for a backdrop, there's been an 11.7% increase in referrals through to children's social care, which meant there was 7,951 referrals in this same period. So of almost 8,000 referrals, only 200 resulted in any form of complaints. The good news in relation to that is that 64% of those, once they were looked at and addressed by the managers internally, 64% of them were found to have no fault. So only 18, which is 9%, and 54, 27%, so 9%, sorry, 18 were upheld, and 27% or 54 complaints were partially upheld. Reasons for the complaints being upheld has remained similar year on year, and I know this will probably be an issue for the committee. The top two themes are delays in service and lack of communications. In relation to the upheld ones, that only related to 9 complaints about delays in service and 6 in relation to communications. 54 of the 200 were partially upheld, and again very similar reasons. 14 cases where it was lack of communication, and 12 where there were delays in service. Those were the top 2 themes. Again, another positive is that despite the increase in the number of complaints, only 4 escalated to stage 2, which is the second level. And of these 4, in 2, no fault was found. In 1, there was some of it was partially upheld, and at the time of writing the report, 1 was still ongoing. So again, numbers have stayed low. 6 referrals were made to the local government ombudsman, because anybody can refer a case to the local government ombudsman at any stage of the process. They don't necessarily have to go through our internal processes. But of the 6 that were referred, none of them were upheld, which is again a positive. So we do endeavour to learn from complaints. It's a key part of our quality assurance process. Individual workers where complaints have been made about them or in relation to their practice have conversations with their managers and look at whether they need additional training or what can be put in place to support that worker to make sure there's no similar issues in the future. And we do pick up any themes and try and address those as part of our ongoing improvement plan. We are quite pleased that in relation to national and regional complaints, whilst everybody's seen an increase, ours has, the ones that are upheld and partially upheld has remained really similar. And I don't think there's much more I can say, but I'm open to questions.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. And do we have some questions? Councillor Reid, I think you said you'd like to have a question.
Well, I did actually have a couple of questions, but you've been very good, thank you very much, and very explanatory in the report. Of course, the one thing that we are mindful of is those families that don't want to get involved, and of course that is a difficulty and a technicality that obviously has to be sensitively aware of. With regard to the complaints that have been addressed and whatever, I mean, like all services, there's always difficulties in supplying a service. And you have alluded to the fact that there's been 20 that have been due to lack of communication and 21 that's been delays in the service. Could you give us or share any confidence that you have to address the causes as to why, and could these resource levels be improved at all for us?
Okay. It continues to be one of our targets and priorities in relation to complaints. I think there's a few issues that come into play with this, and I appreciate the numbers are small, but we still do have some turnover of staff in the frontline teams, and I think that sometimes builds in some delays where, particularly if we've got agency social workers, which I know we are quite privileged and we haven't got that many agency workers, but they can leave at very short notice, and then it will take time to put alternative arrangements in place. We do try and make that as seamlessly as possible, but I think some of the issues may creep in there where there's a change of worker. In relation to lack of communication also, one of the issues we have is about expectations. So I think if members of the public and children and families want to speak to their social worker and they'll make a call or email, sometimes there's a bit of an expectation that the social worker might respond immediately, and that's not always possible. Sometimes social workers are in meetings, they're involved with doing visits, travelling around the county, not always easy to get straight back to people. But what we have tried to do this year is we've revisited what we call the initial visits. When a family is referred to us and a social worker goes out on their first visit, we've produced some updated practice guidance and shared it with them, which clearly says when you first visit, you need to agree and talk with the children and family about how often they will expect to see you, how often they'll expect to hear from you, what the trajectory might be. So, you know, you might not hear from me till next week or the week after, rather than you're going to hear from me every day. So to try and get that in place. We've also moved to having, there's been some more investment in the customer relations team, which has meant that there's a bit more capacity in there. So the complaints manager is now starting to come to the team managers meeting, which is all children's services team managers. They're held every other month, and she's coming quarterly so she can pick up these themes in a more timely way, and we can keep the focus on complaints on these themes and just keep reminding them. And we've also looked to build it in when we do induction sessions for our newly qualified social workers that are joining us as part of their assessed and supported year in employment and social work apprentices. So it remains on the agenda and we're trying to tackle it on a number of fronts. So please be assured it is work in progress.
You wish to come back, Councillor Reid?
Just briefly to make sure that the clarity is understood, I'm sure by most or all members, and that is with respect to the social workers, we are fully aware that their agendas and what they do on a day-to-day basis, their priorities change by the circumstances of the day. So we do appreciate that that sort of makes for a sort of a variance as well. Thank you very much.
It does, thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have any other questions? I've got one perhaps. Is that obviously you have talked through it, but is there any sort of underlying reason why we've had this sort of nearly doubling of complaints since the previous period that was recorded?
In all honesty, there is no one specific reason. We've seen national and regional increases as well, and increases across the council as a whole. So nothing we can point to and say, oh, that's because of that specifically. Numbers of referrals have gone up, and we always need to bear in mind that our children and families don't necessarily choose to become involved with us, so they don't really have a choice about social workers turning up on their doorstep. And we're also going into their lives at times when they are particularly vulnerable, and it's quite emotional topics and issues that we're dealing with about the care their children are receiving. I think it's positive they do feel able to raise complaints with us, given that they are quite vulnerable at that time. And the only other thing I could think of really was we have worked really hard over the past year to make the service more accessible, so it's more widely advertised and you can make a complaint in person, online, by phone. We're offering translation service for those for whom English isn't a first language. So we've promoted it quite well, and we've tried to make it as seamless and easy as possible. So it is quite easy to make a complaint now if you want to make a complaint. But in answer to your question, I'm not entirely sure why they've doubled. I think it's just a combination of things, and people, the general public, are just more savvy at wanting to express dissatisfaction, I think.
Thanks very much. Would I be right in assuming this is a national trend? It's not exclusive to Lincolnshire, it's across the board, is that right?
That's correct, and there is a local government ombudsman's report which can be shared that does detail that about it's a national trend.
Thanks very much. Councillor Reid, did you wish to come in?
No, only just on the previous remark about complaints and the sensitivity and sort of how people feel about making or whatever. I'm sure we could all make remarks as to the nature of complaints, but it'd be rather better that we don't at this point. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have any further questions or comments from members? None. Okay, I shall now move on to a proposal, and I propose that we've been assured on the annual complaints report for 2023-24, and that we receive the annual statutory complaints report for 24-25 in 12 months' time. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. That's agreed. And thanks, Carolyn, for answering the questions in your presentation this morning. We now have a 10-minute comfort break, so we'll resume at 11:20. Thank you very much. Welcome back, colleagues. We'll now recommence with today's agenda. And we're on item 8 on today's agenda, which is the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee work programme. And the work programme is set out, this is for 2024 to 25, and it's set out on pages 61 to 66 of your agenda pack. And as usual, the actions required of us as a committee are to review and agree the work programme as set out in the report, and also to highlight for discussion any additional scrutiny activity which could be considered for a future inclusion in the work programme. And I'd like to invite Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, to present the report. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have no amendments to the work programme to report. The next meeting of the committee is on the 6th of December. We currently have 4 items listed. We're due to receive the final report and recommendations from Scrutiny Panel A in relation to the Young Carers Scrutiny Review, the Quarter 2 Performance Report, and then 2 exempt pre-decision reports in relation to the business case for the creation of a new short-stay children's home and the Minerva House project, which is remodelling to provide accommodation for children's services. And out of today's meeting, I'll add on the updates of the previous 3 items to October 2025. I have to take any suggestions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Tracy. Any members of the committee like to make any comments or suggestions to the programme? No, I take that as a no. Oh, Councillor Reid.
Well, I think there's one. We're not there yet, Chairman, but when we get to March the 7th, which currently you've got 4 items for, I think there might be more, because I think on behalf of the 4 years of this particular term and whatever, we might be wanting to mention the good work that has been done both by officers and members.
That's an excellent point. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Reid. So we've had no further comments apart from Councillor Reid's very apposite suggestion. So I propose that the work programme is agreed. Can you raise your hand if you support that proposal? That's great. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 9, consideration of exempt information. Items 10 on the agenda contains exempt information, and we'll now need to vote on whether we go into private session. I therefore propose the following motion: that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act. Do I have a seconder?
I'll do that, Chairman.
Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now pause briefly while the streaming is switched off. So if you can just bear with us a moment. Thank you. It's been confirmed that the live streaming is switched off. It hasn't. Ah. I was getting ahead of myself there.